What's up, players? Welcome to episode 84 of Ready Press Play. This is typically your weekly source for everything that's new and exciting in the world of video games, but today is not that episode. We are taking a break and going on a little vacation, and well, yeah, I guess it's a vacation for us. And so we're just going to hit you guys up with the pre recorded episode of the podcast where it's basically topic of the show. And we basically define it by DLC episodes. We call them like downloadable content because they're like special one-off episodes. So we are, and Dan, I'm checking the count right now as we speak. Oh yeah, by the way, co-host, Mr. Daniel Lima over here. Daniel, we are at
Hello.
DLC number 14 as of right now. This is number 14.
You know, Louis, we already talked about this, but I'm a believer with the DLCs that we shouldn't be counting them anymore. We need to do the Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the Assassin's Creed Black Flag. It's like no longer numbered because the numbers don't even mean anything anymore. I feel like.
Exactly. I know. But I'm like a stickler for canon, all right? Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. It's the last time where it was like a number and a subtitle in the same bit. Dude, I wonder if they kept numbering, what would be Assassin's Creed what? Like Assassin's Creed 9 or whatever? Origins?
Probably.
Odyssey?
I mean, let me think. Like, okay, so we had Black Flag, then we had Unity, so that would have been 5. Syndicate would have been 6. Wait, where does Rogue go in that count? Let's consider Rogue a spin-off. So then after Syndicate, it was Origins, so that would have been 7. Then Odyssey would have been 8, and Valhalla would have been 9.
There you go.
9 if we skip Rogue. But Rogue was like, a legit mainline entry as well, I think. So maybe 10.
Yeah, well, there you go. So we just sort of went off topic there, but yeah, so what is this, like August 20th? I'm sorry, yeah, August 20th for you guys when we're debuting this episode on Friday for the audio listeners, the 21st for you YouTube people. Thank you for joining.
We don't typically know when we're going to release those when we record them. So that's kind of new, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah,
for the majority of those episodes, we're usually just like, this will come out sometime, like, oh, when this comes out, we're probably going to be out of this pandemic,
And let me ask you this. I know we've done DLCs that are video and stuff like that, but is this our first video DLC? Like, that's not a spoiler cast?
Good question.
I want to say yes.
This might be our first pre-recorded DLC that goes into the Level 1 Gaming YouTube channel.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, so it's canon though. It's episode number 84. It's a numbered episode. So yeah, for today's topic of the show, we're going to be talking about. So our very, very first DLC, DLC number 1, was the top 20 best games of Ready Press Play's top 20 games of the 2010s, like the decade, like the best games of the decade. We're doing that again. Oh, what's up?
Do you want to know when we did that episode, Louis?
All right, go for it.
That was episode number 10 on March 20th, 2020.
Time goes by really fast. Wow.
I know. At the very beginning of the pandemic, I think that was like over 70 episodes ago.
I wonder why we released it, because I want to say I don't think we actually went on. We would have went on break, but I don't think we had any reason to go on break.
That's a good point too. We actually released that. We recorded that episode before the pandemic had actually hit, and we were planning on releasing it because I was going to go to GDC.
That's what it was.
That was the reason. I didn't go to GDC, but we figured. We planned for this anyway. Let's just take a week off and just put it out.
Yeah, that's right. You were gonna go on GDC, and then the GDC got canceled because of COVID, and then Coronavirus Watch was a thing. But yeah, no. So, and one of the things I think I noticed, I looked at the stats a while back, but the next DLC and the sequel to that was the best games of the 2000s. I want to say that's got the most listens, or one of the highest viewed or listened episode.
Really?
We weren't on video at the time, so we only had our audio metrics to go by. So yeah, we're completing, I guess, the trilogy. I want to say the 80s was going to happen at some point, but for now we're in the 90s now. It's the top 20 best games of the 90s.
And the best games of the 2000s. That one was episode 37, and that came out on September 25th. Of 2020. So that one is almost a year old. Isn't that crazy?
Holy shit.
Yeah.
We haven't done this topic in a year. Oh my god.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Uh,
know.
yeah. So, totally. No, totally. I love the '90s. You know, like VH1. I love the '90s, like
Mhm.
Tubular and stuff like that. I don't know, just
You,
making up
you know,
shit.
it's funny, Lewis. Like I talked when we did the tens. I was like, this is my jam. Like I played a lot of games during the tens. I beat a lot of games during the tens. I got this. When we got to the 2000s, for me, it was more of like, oh, okay, these are like the games that I was given. Like I wasn't that into like, I wasn't buying my own games yet during that decade and stuff. Now for the 90s, this is the decade I was born. I was born in 94. So I lived 6 years of this decade being the first 6 years of my life, and it's we don't all remember the games we were playing when we were three. So it's a weird decade for me because obviously most of the games that I played from the 90s that I remember, I played either at the very end of the decade or I played later on, either in the 2000s or even after that. So I feel like as we go further back, like the less adequate I feel talking about it, because I feel like my amount of experience and knowledge about the decade shrinks.
Actually,
However,
that's a good start. That's a good starting point because I wanted to ask you
mhm,
about your thoughts about the list before we actually, without
mhm.
spoiling the list. What are your thoughts of your picks?
I like my picks. I think I was able to. I was worried I was not even gonna be able to come up with like 10 games that I felt strongly about, but I did, and I even have like quite a few honorable mentions. So it did work out. However, I will say this that I am not, I am not gonna necessarily pick only big hitters. There might be a few weird choices, which was already the case with the 2000s for me, I think. And also, not every game I picked is a game I finished because we're getting to the territory where there's probably no more than, well, number one, there's a lot of games that I played as a kid that don't really have necessarily a finish to them, like something like an MMO or something like that. But number two, I didn't really finish games at that point. I just played something randomly until, I wanted to play something else, right?
Fair enough.
So, um it was harder for me to find the games where it's like, oh, here's Uncharted. Like here's like a game that I played beginning to end that I can stand behind as like a full like story experience. Here's more of like, oh, these are games that I found fun from this decade and I think are worth shouting out and stuff like that. So,
Okay.
um yeah. How about you?
Yeah. For me personally, I was thinking about like my list, and number one, I feel like a basic bitch because I'm only doing nothing but like goats. Number two, um, with like again, one or two exceptions, but like as a general rule, like almost there's like with like a certain stretching for like one or two of these games. All of these games hold up to this day. They can be played even
Hmm.
by modern standards, by modern conventions, in my opinion, in my humble opinion.
Fair enough.
So
Fair
I'm
enough.
very happy with the list, and like I'm very happy with like this is kind of like sort of like I guess potentially like the golden age for gaming. Like I want to say, like this was like video games as renaissance and stuff like that. Like people were coming to their own, companies and franchises were being established, and names were being cemented. You know, so I
Hmm.
would say yeah, I think this is definitely a good decade because we started off at the beginning of the decade in like 91 with the Super Nintendo, and then like midway in the mid 90s, like 95, 96, we got the PlayStation 1 and the Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. So we were getting into that jump into 3D. Now, as a general rule, like I think these especially with the PS1 games, like it's a little bad as far as like they don't stand the test of time, but it's sort of like the stepping stones to like greatness, and we can see like the legacies of these brands, being established or in certain cases being reaffirmed. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to say about my list.
Lewis, do you want to remind listeners at home from kind of the rules that we apply when we
Oh
do this
yes,
episode, if you remember them yourself?
yes. The rules are no remakes or re-releases.
Hmm.
This is not a hard rule. It's a sort of a rule that we sort of inflict on ourselves. No double dipping as far as entries for a franchise. So like Mario had more than one entry in the 90s, so you can only pick one. And then what else? Is there other rules? I can't think of any other rules.
The only other thing I would say is that we each bring 10 games, and we order them from like 10 to 1, and then we mix our list to come up with the top 20. But if we have overlaps, then we can bring in our honorable mentions, and they
Yeah.
come in at the bottom.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes, that's right. So yeah, so we do our top tens, each of them. So like we have to like at the end we kind of like make a composite list where we like at the end we have to agree, you know, like my number 10 and his number 10. Which one of them is 20th and which one is number 19? You know, we just sort of like, you know, versus each other. And if there's like overlap, then the combined score combines and it raises the score up, so that way there's no, you know, there's like it's like an algorithm that we just sort of manually calculate. But I'm very excited because like I made a short list. I always start do these top 10 lists by making a short list, and my short list was 27 games. And so out of 27 games I had to pick from, I had to, you know, figure out a top 10. I'm very happy with my top five. Like my top five are like goats. Also,
Nice.
I'm expecting a lot of overlap because of how basic my list is. So yeah.
There will be some. I guarantee you there will be some. I did, however, stay very truthful to my personal tastes. So there's a few personal choices here, including very higher up in the list that you wouldn't see in anybody else's list other than mine, as I typically do with these things. But I also have some choices that I'm pretty sure will be in your list as well. And if
Okay.
you're wondering what I'm doing right now, if you're looking at the video, I am writing down my list because I had it on my phone and I'm worried that it's going to die during the show. So I want to make sure I don't lose it.
Okay. So yeah, and also just as a separate thing at the end, maybe like when we get to before we announce our number ones, we'll go over our honorable mentions because, or maybe even after the number ones, because the honorable mentions may actually have to get bumped into the top 20 if there's like overlaps and stuff like that. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started on the list. Dan, do you want to start off with your number 10, or should I start off?
I'm gonna start off,
Okay.
and this is an interesting choice for me because there a few of the choices, I feel the games that I put on this list, they're almost put in there to represent a franchise more than to represent the specific game that I picked.
Okay.
And part of the reason why that might be the case is because some franchises kind of like they get mixed up in my head where like all the entries kind of like get grouped together and I just kind of think of it as a whole. So in those situations, I kind of made an arbitrary choice within the franchise. I am picking for my number 10 Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the first one, which came out in 1999. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. Everybody says Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 and 3 are the best ones, right?
Yeah.
I believe that's probably the case. However, no Tony Hawk Pro Skater game is in any of our lists, which I went back and I looked to verify, which I think that is a problem. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, I believe, is one of the highest, like it's like literally one of the top 3 highest rated games on Metacritic. So in order to correct our past mistakes of not including any Tony Hawk's Pro Skater game in our list, I am just going to include the first one that barely makes the cut in here on 99, especially because at the end of the day, I don't remember the difference between them. To me, they're all just one game. I just remember it as one thing. But I just know that growing up, I had my PS1 and I played the shit out of all the Tony Hawk games on my PS1. I had so much fun with it. Growing up, and I probably say this sentence like every few episodes, but growing up in Brazil, you know, as a little Brazilian, not knowing English, there are a lot of games that I couldn't really enjoy as they were meant to be enjoyed at that point. Like I couldn't go and play Final Fantasy VI or something and really understand it. So it was games like that that really spoke the most to me, where it was all about the mechanics. It was all about the controls, listening to some fun music, going around, trying to make tricks on your skateboard. And everybody knew Tony Hawk in the 90s. Nobody does now, apparently,
That's true.
when you look at when you look at his Twitter feed, which is really funny. Um, but yeah, I just figured, you know, we got to correct this mistake. We got to get some Tony Hawk game in one of our lists. So it's coming in here at number 10, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater from 1999.
I feel sorry for all those that had to play that game on the Nintendo 64. I want to say, wasn't that like the worst version of the game? I don't know. I can't remember, but
yeah, I don't know because I only play them on the PS1.
all right, that's a good one. That's a good start. I'll allow it. I cringed a little at the beginning, and I'm like, you know what? Okay. My number 10 game is a game that I ended up playing like in the 2010s. Like I discovered the game after the fact by a friend of mine, and I was just like, it's so, I don't know, it was so captivating, it was so hypnotizing. The soundtrack is like A1. It's a little known Square game called Secret of Mana.
I knew that was it when you were leading up to it because I remember you talk. I think it was you're sharing the love at some point.
Yes, it
So
was.
I remember you talking about it when you said you played it on the 2010s. I was like, oh, that game.
Yeah. So it's like it's one of those like action RPGs like that sort of like trailblazed the genre because back then like RPGs were very much turn based. You know, think like Earthbound, think Pokemon. You know, there wasn't like an RPG where it's like you're actively fighting and like, you know, it's not, there's no pause menu. There's no like, you know, there is some like, you know, pop up menus, like a little, like a spinning, like a wheel circle thing. But for the most part, like the action is very like, you know, like not like real time. I guess it was gonna say it like the best way to explain it. It was like the Final Fantasy 15 of its day. You know how like Final Fantasy like 15 like switched over to like action RPG and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's sort of like that, but for Super Nintendo.
Cool.
And the story was very like the story was actually like very adult centric. That you there's a lot of things that are unsaid like as like when I was playing it as an adult in the 2010s, it's like, oh my god, like it's kind of like they just sort of like just do some innuendo that like kids will not get, but there's like ramifications that you're like, that's kind of fucked up, you know, like that kind of stuff. I really like that, and I think that it's very mature writing without like, you know, without being so overtly like, I don't know, violent or just too much to handle for kids, is the way I can explain it. So shout out to that one, and shout out to that soundtrack.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think that in a time frame where um, maturity in video games was probably often questioned as something, and it was probably something that was harder to do with the capabilities of the hardware at the time. That the best way that they could achieve that was through writing and dialogue in games like that were focused on the story and the dialogue and etc. Um, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've heard pretty good things about it. I have a little bit of a gap with a lot of those like old school Square RPGs,
Oh
but
yeah.
it would be cool to play eventually.
And one last thing, shout out to like the 3D mode 7 graphics they had. There's like a part where you get a dragon and you can ride the dragon in the overworld, and it's got like this weird like shifting scale, like you know, it's pixelated, right? It's like old school 3D. It's
I
so
know
like
exactly what that looks like.
that parallax thing going on, whatever. That's so cool. I think it's kind of, it brought a smile to my face, even like with how like old and archaic it is. It's so it's like a novelty, I guess. It's like it's quaint. Yeah, quaint.
Yeah, it's almost kind of like a graphical gimmick when you think about it, but like at the time it was like the closest thing to 3D that could be done at that point in the hardware. So cool. All right. So I know that your list is going to be very console centric. Mine is going to have a little bit of PC flair too because I used to play more PC games back in the day, and that gets represented by my number 9 here, which we talked about this franchise recently in the podcast in a regular episode, which is SimCity 2000. SimCity 2000 came out apparently in 93. This date must be wrong that I have written down here, because that would be weird if they called the game 2000 when it came out in 93, although they used to do a lot of weird shit like that with that naming convention. No, it actually did come out in 93. But this was the SimCity game that I played the most off. I obviously played it on PC, which I think was the platform that most people played it on, but it was also available on other platforms as well. And this game was just a lot of fun. I really liked the idea of management games at this time. And I had a few others like honorable mentions like that, such as like Age of Empires and Asian mythology and that stuff. And you know, it was kind of a precursor to, you know, the Sims that came out in the following decade and so forth. But just creating your city, dealing with all of the different resources within the city, creating the buildings that you want to create, dealing with the issues that arise as you're trying to manage the city. It was just one of those games that I really enjoyed getting my hands around, and I think really kind of stimulated myself as a kid. Like I really enjoyed like kind of sitting behind a computer and finding these engaging, like highly stimulating, thoughtful games where I could get behind and try to plan strategies and figure out how to get through and solve the problems in front of me and so forth. So I definitely wanted to give this franchise a shout out.
Cool. Yeah, that's actually. I'm looking at screenshots of the game, and number one, I just like it's just so funny just seeing like a window, like one of those old like Apple windows and stuff, and the top
Yeah,
like file and like it's just so I don't know. It just seems so like quaint. I guess another
I
word.
know. It's almost nostalgic even if you didn't play it, just based on the like that old like
Window.
Windows 94 look, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So that's cool. All right. So my number 9 game will be. Let's take a look here. I don't even remember because I have it hidden on myself. Like,
Let me guess. The Lion King.
you know what? That was actually on my honorable mentions. I thought about
Mhm.
it, but I don't think it's like top 10 games of the 90s material. You know what I mean? Like, as I love the game, but it's not like
Mhm.
big picture.
Okay.
Yeah. So mine. Okay, so I'm gonna. I didn't say this at the beginning when I was giving my little recap of my list, but I do have an overrepresentation of fighting games on my '90s list, and I think it's like 3 or 4 games. I can't remember the count, but here we go. My number 9 is Mortal Kombat 3, and I say 3 specifically because I think that the Mortal Kombat games for the Super Nintendo are actually kind of bad in a modern convention sense. I think they were good for the time, but they're not like easily accessible or like easily controllable or easy to get your wrap your head around by like modern gamer standards. For once, specifically the first Mortal Kombat, it's very clunky, it's very heavy, and like just it's so I don't know slow. It just there's no combos. It's so like it's the feel isn't right. Basically, is what I'm gonna say. So with each sequel, they get the feel better, and so with Mortal Kombat 3 being like the last good game in the I guess let's call it the original like art style with the digitized graphics. Mortal Kombat 3 is the best because it introduces a run mechanic, which like actually speeds up the flow and the feel of the game. Mortal Kombat 3 was like the game that I played the most in the Sega Genesis. I had memorized the cheat codes, like you had like up, down, left, right, B, like all those other combinations. I still have my like little parchment of all of my handwritten notes and stuff like in my drawer from like back in the 90s, and it had like a secret menu where you can make your fatalities easier, and then you can also play Galaga. And yeah, it was the best feel as far as like fighting games perspective. And then also like this is the one game that I was saying like as far as an exception to the rule about whether it holds up by modern standards. I would say this one's like my weakest one, but it's
Hmm.
still one of those games where like I have a soft spot for the game. I mean, the franchise means a lot. People still play Mortal Kombat to this day. Mortal Kombat 11 is popping and everything like that. So I just to say, as far as the original trilogy goes, the third one is the best. So
And we kind of hit our first overlap because I had Mortal Kombat on my list. But I just put the first one in there, but it's another one of those situations where I thought of it more as like Mortal Kombat as a franchise because once again, I don't remember the difference between the games because differently than you, I probably played all of them at the same time while I was 4. So I there's no way I would like be able to differentiate between the different games.
um,
But I just know that, as a little kid that I played the shit out of Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo. Um, with my siblings and my friends, and I said when I was 4, I might be exaggerating there, but when I was little, I don't really have like super strong memories of it, but I have enough to know that I had an attachment to that franchise, which any mild interest that I have in that franchise to this day was born from those very young days when I was playing those games on the Super Nintendo. So I actually had it at my number 6.
nice.
um So this one, I'm gonna go with your choice of Mortal Kombat 3. I'm gonna trust that you picked the right one. And that one is probably gonna get elevated in the final list for being present in Bolt.
Yeah, with Mortal Kombat's, just think that the gameplay gets faster and more characters are in the roster with each
Mm-hmm.
entry. Also, they added more alities, so like babalities, animalities, and all this other stuff. So like things get bigger and better, in my opinion.
Now, I do want to point out something. I asked you about the Lion King, right? And you said something akin to like, like that, I really like that game, but I don't see it as the best. Well, like I've only played like 10 games from the 90s. So like my list is like these are the games I played basically.
You're
Like
limited to your what you okay.
like I'm limited to the games I played and the ones I like. So my list is very much like a favorite, like my favorites type list more than like, oh, like the craft, like, or like it's not about that to me. Like it's about like, and
Okay.
I'm saying this as a disclaimer
Okay.
for what I'm gonna say next. And I think you may later want to bring in Lion King to kind of to go with parity with this, because my number 8 is Aladdin. My number 8 is the Aladdin game for the Super Nintendo. Now, here's the thing. There were 2 Aladdin games. There was one on the Sega Genesis. There was one on the Super Nintendo. There were more later. There was like a port to like one of the Game Boys. I don't remember, which specifically. But the one that I truly grew up with, that I loved playing, that I went back to and played later on emulators and stuff. Don't call the police on me. Um, that was the Aladdin game on the Super Nintendo, and that one was not included in the recent collection that got released between Lion King and Aladdin. They included the Genesis version on that one, as well as maybe one of the Game Boy versions. Um, and I really wish, I don't understand why, like what happened with this particular version of the game, why it never got re-released in any form, why it was not included in the collection. But I really wish that there was a way that I could play that game in a modern console, because I really loved it. I thought it was so fun. The way that it presented the story of the movie through gameplay, kind of similar to how you feel about the Lion King game as well. Um, so I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it other than it was fun. It had a lot of action. It had a lot of like just fun sequences and cool graphics for me at the time. And it just made me giddy to play because I love the movie. It's one of my favorite Disney movies, and just kind of play through the story in a fun game was just exactly what I wanted, at that time, and what I got to experience with that game. It was one of the games that I played the most on my Super Nintendo. So I needed to give it a shout.
Okay, that's interesting. Just
Yeah.
I just want to say that you've been raised improperly, and I'm very sorry. The Sega Genesis version is the correct version of Aladdin.
I've seen online as much people as say one way or the other. Like if you put a poll on Twitter, I've seen polls that have like pretty much 50 to 50-50 votes in there. I'm not quite sure what the deal is. People tend to like the graphics of the Genesis version better, but apparently the gameplay was better on the Super Nintendo. I don't really know. I only played the one I played, and I loved it, and I miss it, and I wish it got re-released in some way. So that's
Interesting.
that's
Yeah.
all I got.
So for whatever reason, like Disney decided to hire two different companies to make Aladdin, which is why
Mm-hmm.
they are two different games made by two different teams. So
Mm-hmm.
they're not like a cross port like the way it was for like the Lion King on the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. Which oddly enough on that collection they give you both versions, the Super Nintendo and the Genesis versions
Mm-hmm.
in that collection. And so yeah, I'm a little miffed on that one too, because like I would hope that they would have put in the effort to put both versions of the games for this collection. That's the whole point of a collection and a re-release and stuff like that. It helps with game preservation, and it helps people reintroduce people to like classic games in a with modern sensibilities. So yeah, I only played the Genesis version. And I like that. I like that version as well. So I never played the Super Nintendo version. I've seen YouTube videos of how it looks like, and I wasn't like sold on what I saw. Let's just go with that. But yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
okay. I'll as given your parameters about how you're limited with your choices, I'll I'll allow it.
The Super Nintendo version was developed by Capcom. I just want to throw that out there. And in fact, I think if you played it, you might like it, Lewis, because now that I'm thinking about it, the controls are kind of similar to Street Fighter. Like the controls and the animations, like it kind of feels like playing Street Fighter 2 a little bit. But anyway.
Okay. All right. So my number 8 spot is gonna go to a franchise that just celebrated its anniversary. It's iconic. He's got movies. He's got shows. Um, he's everywhere. He's fast. Blue Blur, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the
Did
Sega
you see
Genesis.
the news, by the way? I think this might be an extra news point on the next regular episode that we do, which will have happened in the past when people listen to this. But they casted Knuckles on the
Idris
Sonic
Elba,
2 movie. Yeah,
yeah, I saw that.
Man, that's a
but
funny
yeah,
casting choice.
so yeah, with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, I think it's of the trilogy. Like, I will say this. I think Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, I think those are better games, like from a pure like metrics, like however you want to measure it. I think that Sonic 3 is definitely like a better game that trounces over Sonic 2, but I think Sonic 2 specifically is like the one that everyone's played. It's the one that everyone knows. It's got, I would say, like, if I were to just hypothetically guess, I would say, like, of the three games, I would say like Sonic 2 is probably the peak for sales, and this is just me speculating. Dan will probably fact check me as I'm speaking, but whatever. But I would say it's probably like the peak for the sales, and also just Sonic 2 is where it's at. It's all you need is Sonic 2. All you need is Sonic and Tails. That's really all you need. It's got like the built-in little brother mode where Tails can follow you and stuff, but if he falls behind, whatever, he'll catch up to you later. It's like one of those situations where like my friends told me like, oh yeah, me and my brother used to play that, and I would have my little brother play as Tails, and then I would sit back during the Doctor Robotnik fights. I would have him do all the fighting because if he gets damaged, it doesn't matter. He can respawn infinitely, and so the battle is won. And so I'm like, oh, that's kind of smart. And also, I really I played it a lot, even in the 2010s or in the whenever I had like my nephew come over, and then we would play like those little mini games where you collect the 50 rings, you got the little checkpoint, and then there's like that little three-dimensional thing where you're in this little tube and you're like trying to like outdo each other with the collecting the coins and stuff like that. You're gonna try to jump and leapfrog over each other and to get who gets first place. I think that's just like the pinnacle, like the it hits the right notes. It has the good levels. It has a good cheat mode, a good debug mode, and yeah, I like it.
Cool. I this might be a revelation or it might be something that I mentioned before, but I don't think I have ever touched my hands in a Sega console in my life. And yeah, never met anybody that owned them. Never it was like this thing that like when I was like 20 I heard about what Sega was basically. I'm exaggerating, but I mean like it was not part of my circles in any way, like for a really long time. And nowadays, like, I mean, pretty much ever since I've become an adult, Sega is no longer relevant in the console space. So my experience with the Sonic games is the following. Um, when I was in elementary school, I had a computer class where in the computer of my computer class, for some reason, they had Sonic games installed. Now, I don't even know if that was like some actual like legit PC port off the games,
Probably not.
or if it was just like some illegal shit. I don't know. But I would be in computer class. I would get my like stuff done quickly that I needed to do, and then I would play Sonic. So, and I had fun. I had fun playing it that way. That's the way I've known Sonic. And then I played some of the 3D Sonics later on, like on the Wii. And those were not that great.
Sonic Colors is all right. Yeah. And if you played the one with here's a werewolf, then that's no bueno.
Yeah, Sonic Unleashed. I own that, and I played it quite a bit. It was okay at times, and then bad at other times. Yeah. But anyway, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I'm okay with that.
Thanks. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say or add to it, but I can't really think about it. Oh yeah, well, okay. I'm gonna tell you this. This is one thing I do want to add. I never beat the game as like a kid, like, and I
Mm-hmm.
really tried a lot. I stayed up to like 4. I remember one time I stayed up to like 4 or 5 in the morning playing the game, like, and I would have like I would try to have perfect runs where I have like a lot of lives built up, like I farmed like lives in early on, and like with each level, like the game kept getting harder and harder, and like there's no like difficulty setting, it's just one difficulty, and like I would always get game overs, and I would really be really frustrated, but I would continue and continue to try, and I never beat the game. I made pretty far, but then as an adult, I discovered that there's a cheat, and it's not even a cheat thing. It's like you enter in a code, and it's basically developer mode. It's called debug mode, but they
Mm-hmm.
call it a cheat for consumers. But it's a debug mode where you can literally like teleport Sonic and move the camera around anywhere you want. You can spawn anything you want. You can spawn a checkpoint. You can spawn rings. You can spawn like item boxes. Like anything you
Mm-hmm.
want. You basically it's debug mode.
That's cool. Yeah.
And so like I was only able to beat the game because of the debug mode, and even then, like the rolling credits felt hollow. Number one,
Mm.
number two, I even struggled to beat the game because the final level, the final boss fight, is damn near impossible, and that's with cheats. So just throwing that out there.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Lewis, I'm about to state the pick that you're probably going to have the most issue with so
Okay.
far in my list, and
Okay.
that's after I already mentioned Aladdin and Tony Hawk and the ones that you thought were a little sus.
Okay.
Here's the best one though.
All right. Here we
My
go.
number 7 is The House of the Dead 2.
I'm actually not. I'm actually not gonna. You know, what is it called?
Poo poo is
No,
what you usually say.
no, I'm not gonna poo-poo you on this one. Here's why.
Okay.
On my short list, Time Crisis was on there.
Mm. Cool, 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 cool. Yeah, man, The House of the Dead 2. What a time for the what are they called again? Like the on rails, like is it light gun? Or
Yeah,
why am I thinking light gun shooters?
yeah.
On the arcades, you go in, you get your quarters, or maybe at that point it was already like other methods of payment or whatever. And you go in, you're trying to get through, just like you and a friend, just shooting zombies, trying to get through the levels and so forth. That was a really fun game. And specifically, The House of the Dead 2 is the one that I have the biggest attachment to, though, because I actually owned a PC version of the game. So because I owned the PC version of the game, I didn't just play it in arcades like I did do it many times when going out, but I actually could play through and beat the game like in a sitting, like at home.
Because there's no coins or quarters that you run out of. You know?
Exactly.
Nah, that's
Um,
sus. Come on, man.
but here's the thing though, like I was able to train that way and get really good at it, and then actually be able to like make good progress in the arcade.
But like,
Although
are you using like your mouse to like click on it?
yes,
Like that's
it
not real training.
well, it in a way kind of is, but it's basically like playing a regular shooter on PC, except that you're not moving your character. But that allowed me to figure out all the tricks of the bosses. There's that game has like 6 different bosses. Each boss has like its own like weak spot and behaves a certain way and has different patterns. There are a lot of secrets. There are like a lot of moments where it's like like, oh, there's like this thing that flashes on screen for a second, so if you're waiting for it, like you can shoot it and like get a bonus or something. And because I got to play it so much, and I could like I first like played it till I was able to beat it, and then I tried to figure out like how much faster I could beat it and so forth. The more I liked exploring all the different secrets and all the things that you could do in the game. um Also, that game had like a story. I don't know if I fully understood it, especially at the time, but it did have a story that was going on. There was like a logic to like how the different characters that you met in the adventure connected to each other, and etc. Um,
Oh my
um,
god, I didn't even realize there was lore.
yeah,
But
there is lore. The
you
Halls of the Dead has some lore. And I generally just really my main thing though is like my main thing with this game is just like the bosses. I thought the bosses were so fun. Their designs were so cool and unique. They had so many like cool moves. They were very stressful to get through sometimes. But I just feel like that game is my representation of almost like a whole genre of like cool games that we got at that time, that we don't really get to see as much of nowadays.
As a child, I was at a bowling alley, and I saw like a police officer playing House of the Dead, and
Hmm.
it was kind of hilarious because he's got an
That's kind of
actual,
cool.
a real gun on his holster, like on his hip, but he's in there like really like into the game and just like really like shooting in the arcade, like actually like ta 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 ta, like and reloading really fast, and it was also. I honestly would have went with Time Crisis if I were to have picked a light gun
Hmm.
shooter. The only reason why I like Time Crisis more is because the gun on the arcade had like this like rumble like snapping motion. It
Uh-huh.
was really loud, that loud click, like ta ta ta, like you felt that machine gun like that thing, and that's the only reason why. But also like I don't know, is it does it in my head, in my memory, and this is again just going off of memory, isn't Time Crisis faster? Like, isn't like House of the Dead a little slower?
Yeah,
As,
House of the Dead, like it had its moments where it would like get faster, but I think you're right. I think Time Crisis was more fast paced
yeah.
because
So,
you're in a crisis for time. So
and House of the Dead, you're literally like zombies walking very slowly.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I
But
would
they
have personally, I would give the edge to Time Crisis, but I'm not offended either that you would pick this one.
I didn't play Time Crisis as much as House of the Dead. House of the Dead is just the one that I have a bigger connection to. But the, House of the Dead did have its like tense moments as well, though. It was like they would like start you off like really slow, like yeah, you go into a room and then the zombies are moving really slowly. But they would do these like camera transitions where it's like suddenly you turn to the side and there's like two like jumping on you or whatever. Like
Yeah.
um,
Okay. Yeah. That's good.
it
That's
was fun. It was fun.
also just shout out to Area 51. Also, just throw that out there.
Yes, and I'm just gonna say, Louis, idea like I already mentioned my number six. So my number six, which would come up next, is the Mortal Kombat franchise in
Hmm.
general. Which I'm picking Mortal Kombat 3 now since you mentioned that is the better one. So I think you can do your 7 and 6 together, and then we'll do our top fives.
Okay. All right. So my number 7 is going to be. Oh my god. Again, okay, here we go. I'm like literally like I have like I do that thing where like a Temple of Time where it's like it's white text so I can't see it and I can't remember what I put on there, so
Oh no.
I'm literally reacting to my I was like, okay, all right, here we go. All right, here we go. So my number 7 is gonna be for the Nintendo 64, a game that definitely is like a franchise that stands the test of time. Pretty much, for the most part, every entry is a game that you can still play to this day. Um, Mario Kart 64.
Nice,
I
nice.
I definitely want to say that between this one and the Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo, this one is definitely like is like the evolution and just sort of trounces on Super Mario Kart and stuff like that. It just Super Mario Kart is definitely slow and it's very like its controls are very hard and it's very outdated and it's not very good for like kids these days. Mario Kart
Hmm.
64 has kind of sort of gets that balance right where it's faster paced, the controls are good, like even kids can play the game. I introduced the game to like my nieces and nephews when they were like little children and stuff and they were growing up and they were like playing the hell out of the game. Me and my brothers as adults in the 2010s we were playing the game. Visually it's a little bad, like as far as like it's got that low poly count and stuff like that. It's a little, but from mechanics and fun, it's got that in spade. It's arguably has one of like the best versus modes in like any Mario Kart to date. Like it wasn't until Mario Kart 8 Deluxe that there was even a question that they made whether or not it's something beats Mario Kart 64. So yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to this game and all the memories I've had with this game. It's definitely worth playing, and there's a speedrun community for this game where people want to like exploit the game and have like the fastest, most impossible, races where they like skip part of the level and stuff like that. There's like it's just out there. It's just so much about this game that to say. So yeah, Mario Kart
Do,
64.
do you really think it still stands the test of time? Like, would you still have fun playing it like nowadays after Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and everything that came out after it?
You know, what's kind of interesting is like I was still playing Mario Kart 64 in my rotation. Um, Whenever Mario Kart Wii and was a thing. I don't remember. I think I
Hmm.
might have dropped it once Mario Kart 8 for the Wii U came out. But one of the things that I did notice is like I was game for playing this game with my friends. But like one of the things that I noticed, and this is before I had like the HD converter on my N64, is like I would actually plug in the actual composite into a signal into an actual HD TV. And when you play that on an HD TV, like the picture gets smeared and blurred, and it's not as good as a CRT
Mm.
TV. And so one of the things that my friends, when we were playing the game, were complaining about is they can't see anything. So I
Mm,
think
I see.
maybe
I see.
now I can probably get away with playing it now because I have my little modern conveniences.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's one thing that I will say is probably better for a CRT TV. The CRT like kind of screen effect sort of hides the blemishes that an HD TV is now very unforgiving, or a flat screen is unforgiving about. So, but yeah, uh, so maybe it doesn't stand the test of time, but for me it does. I can still play this game like as if it's new, for me
Hmm.
personally.
Cool.
All right. And by the way, before I move on, did you have anything you wanted to add to it? Did you ever play it or?
I actually never played that entry. I've played Super Mario Kart from the Super Nintendo. I've played you know what? I played all the ones then from the Wii forward. I played DS, I played Wii, I played 7, I played 8, I played 8 Deluxe. But the two Mario Karts that I didn't play are two very beloved ones, which are 64 and Double Dash. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's all right. Cool, cool. All right. My number 6 game is all right. I'm surprised that there was no room for this game in my top 5. It's definitely one of the most Lewis games to ever be on this list, and it's super obvious and more shocking that it's again so low. Hey, you want to take a guess?
Street Fighter 2.
No,
Okay.
close. You're in
Well,
the.
I know the games that you haven't mentioned yet that are gonna be in your list somewhere. So I'm like, which one did you relegate to number 6 out of these big hitters? Like, so I'm trying to figure out like it maybe a Zelda or a Mario game. You know.
It's got Zelda and Mario in it. Smash 64.
Oh, damn. All right.
Yeah, Smash 64. I am a little surprised there was no room for it in my top
Me
5.
too.
I was initially planning on putting it in there, but like after when I was landing on it, like I was like, okay, this might be the one that has to go as far as to the bottom. It's the top of the bottom. I'll put it to you that way. But yeah, like one of I love Smash 64, and let me just say I was actually going to start with my complaints. Let's start with my likes. Okay, Smash 64, innovative. It's fighting games were very complicated. They were very like if they weren't like very precise, then people were just button mashing.
Hmm.
And then Masahiro Sakurai, he just developed a fighting game with like a simple fighting mechanics that was very intuitive, user friendly, and easy to like wrap your head around, easy to pick up, easy to play, and very welcoming with characters like Mario and Pikachu. So I think it's like one of those kind of things where like Nintendo didn't realize what they had, and it's definitely like a very humble beginnings for our franchise. And I just wanted to say that there are things that I would have preferred that they would have done in the original release, but games don't get patched, so it is what it is. But ultimately, all of those things kind of sort of go by the wayside because a fan basically patched it for us, and that's why I have Smash Remix that I still play to this day. So for the most part, like I've been playing Smash 64 like for like almost the entire run. I still play it. Even like original vanilla Smash 64, like there's something about it that is just very well, actually I take that back. I have to play vanilla Smash 64 because of tournaments, and that's the only thing that they don't allow mods and stuff like that. But that's all that notwithstanding, I just wanted to say that I will always think to myself that when it comes to like the meta game, when it comes to like going into a bracket, when it comes to going in a tournament, the farthest I will ever go in any big thousand plus people tournament is gonna be Smash 64 because that's the game where I'm the most real. So I'm very happy about that, and I love this game, love the franchise, and yeah, humble beginnings.
Yeah. Once again, it's just kind of that Nintendo 64 gap for me where a lot of these franchises I only started playing later on. So I played Melee in a friend's house, and then Brawl was the first one I owned, and then 4 and Ultimate. I've owned all the ones since then. But 64, I will say this, Lewis, to make you feel a little bit bad about it. Smash Ultimate would not exist if it wasn't for Smash 64. You know? So maybe you should have been more respectful about the origins of your favorite franchise.
What's kind of funny is like I don't know if you know this story, but Masahiro Sakurai made the prototype for Smash 64 without telling Nintendo. Like he knew that he couldn't just pitch them the idea of Nintendo's mascots fighting each other. So instead, he had to make it first in secret and then show them a build with like 4 characters. He had like Donkey Kong, Fox, and Mario. I forgot who the 4th character was, but they were like, here's what we got. And because they were able to play it and see that it's fun, then they were like, okay, you can go ahead and make the rest of the game.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I will never forget that E3 moment, or I think it was E3, where Reggie played Smash Brothers against like a pro player, and he was so bad at it.
Yes, like, it was cringe.
Well, but he wasn't bad at it like I'm bad at it, where it's like, I know what the buttons do, but then like I'm not good at executing it. Versus like it come across like he had never tried, like it almost came across like he had never touched the controller before.
Yeah, that's what I that's what was so cringe about it. Is like he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play this on my 3DS so that way I can whoop your ass next year. And then the 1 year later, the SpongeBob SquarePants 1 year later, and then that happens. Yeah. I just think that it was I don't know. Like I knew that there was no way Reggie would ever beat Hungrybox.
Yeah, of course.
But like at the very least, play at your level, Dan. Like at least know how to up B to the stage. At least know how to recover. At least do the bare minimum. You couldn't even do that.
It's kind of interesting. This is a tangent, so I'm not going to go on it long. But I've wanted to talk about Reggie in the podcast before. I think there was a one time where I was like, I want to talk about Reggie, and then we didn't. But I have this thing with Reggie, which is like he's so beloved, and I get why. Like I get like the memes are fun and all that stuff, but he always rubbed me as the kind of person that was more of an executive than he was a gamer. And those never become my favorite types of people that work in games. Like I understand why there are people that way that work in games. Like that doesn't mean that they're not competent at what they do. Like it's more important that somebody's competent at their job than it is that they, love games. But he was not like with somebody like Masahiro Sakurai, right? Like he's a personality where he loves games. Shuhei Yoshida loves games. Like I don't know why I'm blanking. Phil Spencer loves games. And with Reggie, I'm not sure. Like, I kind of feel like he might have been more of a, what's the new Sony guy? Jim Ryan? Yeah. I feel like he might have been more of a Jim Ryan type. But he was just good with the memes. Like he knew how to write the memes.
Yeah, and like the Reggie Fils-a-Mech and, My Body Is Ready and all these other stuff. Yeah. Like, I get that. And also, like, there is definitely something to say about like the one E3. I think one of his last E3s he did when the Switch was happening, and he was talking about why we game and like gaming, it's for fun. All that, like he's talking to the camera, talking to the audience and stuff like that. When he doesn't believe it, you know what I mean? It's so yeah.
Yeah. I always had a hard time actually picturing Reggie like gaming on his free time, but maybe he did. Maybe I'm being overly critical here, but.
All right.
Let's get into our top 5.
All right. Before you say your top 5, I just want to say, again, just reiterating top 5, GOATs. Like just.
Yes.
All right. I hope you can like bring that level of excellence that I brought. Go for it.
Earthworm Jim. No. Oh man. Wait, I'm rethinking my top 5 right now.
Are you thinking about rearranging it?
Yeah, so I agree with the 5 games I have on the top 5, but I think I fucked up on the ordering of it. So,
you want me to go first?
I'll let you go first.
All right. So, my number 5 is going to be, let's see what I got here. Oh, okay, here we go. You're right. All right. That's another one. You called it. I decided to go with Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. And let me go ahead and give you guys the naming conventions, all right? The Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was the 5th iteration of Street Fighter 2. And as a matter of fact, Super Street Fighter, how do I put this? When it first debuted back in '91, it debuted like on the arcades. It was just called Street Fighter 2: The Road Warrior. And it was one of like the beginnings of like fighting games, of modern fighting games. It basically is the granddaddy of what fighting games are. It sort of like solidified how the menu and the HUDs are supposed to look like, and combos. Basically, side story, when they were developing Street Fighter 2, the combo system, was a glitch that they were like finding in development, and then they realized that it's better, like it was more fun to leave it, because the idea of a combo was, like when you think about Street Fighter 1, it was very much one hit and then that's it, But whenever they was realizing it's like, oh, you do a hit, but you're in lag and hit lag, and then you can hit again and chain it together. That's so rewarding. And so they just realized that it's good. They kept it. Boom. But as far as the reason why I picked Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is because it was like one of like the later refreshes that had like all the characters, like the extra characters like Cammy and T-Hawk and DJ. It also had the secret character Akuma, which was so OP that he was banned in tournaments. And also it had the super meter. Like it was one of the first fighting games that I can think of, it may have been the first, that developed like a super move, where it's like, you do like the Shinku Hadouken and all that other stuff with all these characters. And I think it was really just brilliant and awesome. And it's definitely like the most definitive way to play Street Fighter, because it's basically like the patches, like balance patches couldn't really happen back in the 90s. So instead they just released a new version of the same game. So that's what they did.
All right. I've played Street Fighter 2. I don't know the difference between all the versions in the same way that you do. But I've played it. I've owned a few versions of it, I think, back in the day, and I also I played it in arcade machines. And I remember actually when I went to Full Sail for the first time, because I went there twice, but when I was going for my first degree, that they had outside of one of the classrooms, they had an arcade machine with Street Fighter 2, whatever the version it was. And that it was pretty common for students to in between, during a snack, like a break or something like that, to be out there playing at the arcade machine, or after class or something. And I, not super often, but occasionally would go in there and play with other people. And even though I was bad at it, it's not like everybody around me was good at it either. So it was kind of fun. Like I was able to get a few wins here and there when I played against people that were worse than me. But the thing that's difficult with fighting games like that is that I find they are so, a game like Street Fighter especially, it is so skill based that if you just try to mash buttons, you can't, you will never beat somebody that knows what they're doing.
Right.
And that's the way I play those games, because I don't I am not able, I am a slow thinker, which affects other aspects of my life. I read really slow and stuff like that. I consider myself a smart person, but I take a while to make a decision or to and that translates into, for me, why I struggle so much with games like that, because I can't go in the frames that it takes from somebody to do an attack. I can't respond immediately. I would have to think oh, I need to block, and then block, but then it's too late.
Yeah.
So it doesn't work for me that way. But anyway, I will go as far as to say that Street Fighter 2 is a fun enough game to where even if you don't know how to play it well, you can still have fun while trying to play it.
Yes.
So, at least unless you're playing against somebody like you.
Yeah, no, well, I was going to say, there was even, people that are not, good at the game. If you play against someone else who's at that same level and y'all both button mash, there's something fun about that, too. There's something fun to watch about that as well, I will say. And also just another side story about me playing the game. So, number one, I did a Let's Play on my YouTube channel and it was one of my highest viewed Let's Plays. I forgot what the view count. It might have been 100 or something like that or whatever. But anyways, so The Let's Play was so good. It's one of my finer moments because it was so like it was fun to play. It was fun to record, but it's also fun to watch because there were some moments that were just so hype. There was some double KOs. There were some perfects. All this other stuff. It's so good. I also I definitely do consider myself a pretty like just below elite when it comes to Street Fighter 2. Like there
Mm-hmm.
are real pro players that are like, that are super like pro, and I'm just that next bell rung just below them where it's like I'm at the top of the heap but not pro. And
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why I say this is because I've been to many conventions, including one that was called SGC, or Screw Attack Convention or whatever. At SGC there was an arcade, an open free arcade of, you can just go up there, press start, and then just start playing, and people would line up, and we would play King of the Hill. And I would basically be that person who would just basically like knock everyone the fuck off and clear the line by myself, because I would beat everyone. There was just me and one other person that would be that guy, and we were trading. We were trading games, and then this guy, I thought this guy was better than me, to tell you the truth. But then just to make a statement, I perfected him, and then he got pissed and he perfected me right back. So I'm like, that kind of stuff. But just it's kind of like that interesting like dynamic where it's like whenever you're like, it's like that spirit of the battle is so embodied with this game, and I think that's why I like Ryu so much, because he's all about the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and also at another convention at SGC, they were holding an open like tournament for Street Fighter, and only first and second place get prizes, and I ended up finishing second place, and I was very happy
Nice.
with like testing my might, testing my skill, and being again at the top of the heap, when it comes to a tournament. So
Lewis, I have another good friend of mine who also prides himself on being basically like a he wouldn't say it out loud, but I know like deep inside, like being basically a pro level or like right under pro level Street Fighter 2 player. He's like really into it as well, to the point where there have been times where I was at a gaming event with this friend, and if there was an opportunity to go and play Street Fighter 2 in some kind of like impromptu tournament or something along those lines, he would go and do it and basically beat everybody. So now I just realized that I need to figure out a way to get you both in the same room, so that I can figure out which friend of mine is the best at Street Fighter 2, because it would be one of you. I know for sure it wouldn't be like any other friend. It would be one of you two guys, but I
nice.
I
Well,
got to do that
we,
test.
we I'm pretty. If he has Ultra Street Fighter 2 for the Switch, there's online, so
Mm-hmm.
there's that.
Cool,
But
cool, cool.
yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah, I'm very happy and very proud of that. So yeah, did
Nice.
you? I believe it's your
Yeah,
number five.
I'm ready to go now. So after doing some moving around, I have at my number 5, and once again I am doing this thing where I can't pick which one from the franchise.
Okay.
But it's two options. It's two actual really options, which is Donkey Kong Country 1 or 2 on the Super Nintendo. All right.
I think
So
two is the better one.
2 is the better one. I think that's right. I think that's what I remember best, and that seems to be the general consensus as well. So I'm gonna go with 2. But the truth is, both of these games to little Danny were fantastic. I had such a good time with them. They're also games that I pursued playing later through emulators, and then later in the Super Nintendo Classic. Um, those are the games that really introduced me to the characters from the Donkey Kong universe, because it's not like I was out there playing, the original Donkey Kong in 1981 or whatever. You know, I my dad was probably not even having sex yet at that point. Um,
Oh my god.
um, but I just really like that series as a whole, and I love the way that it was revitalized later on by Retro Studios. It is one of those franchises that I feel like a lot of Nintendo fans are almost like kind of tired of or indifferent about, but that I am really passionate about, to the point where I would be more excited for a surprise like new Donkey Kong game announcement than for pretty much any other Nintendo franchise at this moment, considering we have not gotten a new one since Tropical Freeze in 2014. Um, but the original Donkey Kong Country, it did a lot of weird stuff. Like at that time frame, they were doing the thing with a 3D, non 3D graphics where the sprites are created based off of like pictures taken from a 3D model, right? Which is kind of like something sort of similar to the method they did for Mortal Kombat, which that one was more like live action and stuff. But
Yeah, and
it was like
Rare had to buy a supercomputer for that too, by the way.
yeah, so it was like it was a technically impressive game at the time, but I've also always found it, especially the second one where they polished things up a little bit more and they added a little bit more to it. Um, just a very fun platforming experience. I'm a sucker for platformers. I love platformers, um, and there's a few more platformers to come here in my list. And after readjusting things, I thought, I really like Donkey Kong Country. It goes at the bottom of the top five because I think some of these other platformers are actually better, for different reasons. But I still very much loved it.
So one of the things that wanted to point out is Donkey Kong isn't playable in Donkey Kong Country 2. Too, it's
Yeah, because Donkey Kong Country 2 focused more on like Diddy Kong
and
and
Dixie Kong.
Dixie.
Yeah. So just throwing that out there is kind of funny. But yeah, I think they got like the level design. They perfected the level design in the second game. But I think I don't know. Like the games are also known for their soundtrack, and I can't remember which one had the better soundtrack. I want to say the first one did.
Which, by the way, this shout out to David Wise, who is the known composer behind the Donkey Kong Country series, and who was brought back to compose the tracks for Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. And you're right, I love the Donkey Kong soundtrack, like that underwater, like really
Yeah,
chill,
that's the one.
Ambient music is just I love that. I have that on all the time while I'm doing like coding or doing something on my computer. It's like it's the best. So yeah, I think maybe the game itself has not stood the test of time as much. But I feel like the franchise has. Like I feel like Tropical Freeze is one of the best platformers out there. Like
Returns as well.
currently.
Yeah.
Returns as well. And the soundtrack still stands the test of time as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. 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 My number 4 is, let's take a look here again. Reacting. Okay. This one's a good one. I like it. Um, I decided to basically. I think I might have even done a sharing the level on this one. I don't remember. Um, this is one of those games where it's like that come to Jesus moment, where like games mature. Games. This is where like games can be a movie. I was wanting a movie out of this franchise from since the '90s, and shout out to the voice acting. Have you figured it out yet?
No, I'm struggling here.
All right, for the PlayStation 1, Hideo Kojima, Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yes.
So yeah, I really do like David Hayter's voice even from the first game. The game is I played the shit out of the demo, by the way. Like I had like a demo disc of the PS1, and I would always play that opening sequence. The Shadow Moses Island where he's on the elevator and he's like taking off his clothes and all that stuff, and it's one of those like iconic moments and stuff where like you have like such really good bosses like Psycho Mantis and all these other like Revolver Ocelot and all these like the villains are like A1, and I don't know if they've ever done a Metal Gear Solid where like the bosses lineup are like rival, the first game, and I don't know if if it's possible to recapture that magic, but just in general, like in my memory of things and stuff like that, there's just so many like cool little Easter eggs that they did, like in the Psycho Mantis fight where like it reads your memory card. And then also you have to like, I think it might have been, was it in the first game or I can't remember, like the second game or whatever, but like where you had to like unplug the controller and then play it on your player 2 port in order for it to like not be able to register your inputs and stuff like that. So that way it makes the boss fight like more easier and stuff like that. So the game is definitely good. I remember like a lot of like random ass scenes and stuff like that where he was getting tortured, he's getting electrocuted and all this other stuff. You got to like mash the circle button in order to survive the torture and stuff like that. So yeah, just a lot of good stuff about this game, and I think that this is definitely not the definitive way to play the game. It was remade for like the GameCube called like the Twin Snakes, and I think that might be better because it had more modern like control schemes as far as like being able to like control the game with the dual analog sticks and stuff. But overall, though, I mean, if we're talking about like game defining or like what is it called, like medium
Genre
defining
defining.
games.
Yeah.
Yeah, the medium defining games of all time. This is definitely a stepping stone in that direction.
All right. All right. Good call. Good call. Um, I don't have much to add, so I'm just gonna keep the conversation going.
Wait, one last thing, one last thing. Shout out to the
Mhm.
codex, and then the
Oh
conversation.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so good.
which it's become a meme as well, sort of, right? Like since then, like I've seen a few times where like they bring that up and it's like something else,
Oh
like
my
some
god, like
joke
people
or
like put like that thing where that filter, that green filter, and I'm talking
yeah,
about, and they do that. Yeah, that's so good. I love it.
yeah. All right, Lois. So like, on no, on my number four, or my number four, I want to talk about a platformer game that revitalized what the platforming genre meant.
Don't
You
do it.
know,
I
during
hope
the
it's not.
90s,
I hope it's not what you think
wait,
it is.
during the 90s, we had a transition from 2D to 3D. And all these companies went out trying to figure out how to make, how to perfect the 3D formula, how to, come up with good like camera movements and, motion and 3D platforming motion through 3D environments.
You got it
And there's
wrong.
a game,
You got it wrong. I know what it is. I figured it out. Ah, you
there's a
bitch.
game that stood above them all as the one that got it right and would go to set the precedent for games moving forward. It was also a game made by a studio that would later get established as one of the best studios in the industry, one of the best first party studios in the industry, really. And that game is, of course, Crash Bandicoot.
Holy shit! I was pulling up the wrong one. I was like, okay, let me go ahead and.
Okay, what do you think it was?
I thought you were going with Mario 64.
Okay, so that's the thing. I thought you would have wanted me to do Mario 64. No, all right.
No.
I forgot. What's your opinion on Mario 64?
Oh, I love it. Everything you said about what you just said
Okay.
was true about like
That was
it
the bait.
Yes, it
Mhm.
was. It was definitely okay. You bitch. First off, but no, like I really do think it was. I really love that game, but like when I had to choose between the Mario games in the '90s, I didn't choose this one.
Okay, me too. Me too.
Okay.
So we're in the same line there. Because of that, and also because honestly, like I was a PS1 kid, I wasn't an N64 kid, and it's one of those things. It's what you're given. You love it, like the Sonic versus Mario thing. If I was given a Sega, I would have loved Sonic. I was given a Super Nintendo, so I love Mario, right? But then on the PS1 era, Crash was my boy, so I gotta give my boy Crash some love. I'm specifically adding in here Crash Bandicoot Warped. That is the third game in the series, and that is the best game in the series.
I
All
have
three
to
of those
trust you on
games.
that one, but I honestly thought the second one was the best. But okay.
2 and 3 are pretty good. One is the one that is the most rough around the edges. But I played all three of them a shit ton on the PS1 when I was a kid. I had so much fun. Um, like those games are honestly good examples of games that would typically not really stand the test of time. Like I wouldn't say that it's worth going and getting a PS1 to play the original Crash Bandicoot games. However, they have recently gotten excellently made remasters by Vicarious Visions. Um, and
Insane.
also, I
Yeah.
just realized I could have included in here Crash Team Racing somewhere on the list. I had completely forgotten about it. But I love Crash Team Racing just as much as I love the Crash games themselves. So I could have brought that in here too. Crash Team Racing is what Mario Kart 64 wishes it was.
Oh, you
Just
shut your whore
like, just like Crash Bandicoot Warped is what Super Mario 64 thinks it is. You know what I mean?
No, you're talking blasphemy. I'll let you slide
All
on the
right.
first one, but not on the second one.
All right. I'm not meaning to pick a fight here. I'm just goofing off. I'm just joking. I'm just building up further on my initial bait and stuff. But the truth is, like I grew up with Crash. I think Crash is really fun. I do legitimately think the trilogy of the Crash Bandicoot games, I think Naughty Dog was onto something really special there. And the funny thing too is, like, we now all recognize Naughty Dog as this top tier studio. And when you ask people from Naughty Dog, like the founders from back in the day that are not even around anymore, or some of the people that have been around longer that were part of at least part of that transition, and you ask them something like, I've seen this before in interviews. Like, isn't it weird that you guys were doing Crash Bandicoot and then you went to Jack and Daxter and then you went to Uncharted? Like, why this major like shift every time? And the way they look at it is not that way. The way they look at it is that it's all an evolution. Like, they see Crash Bandicoot as the game that planted the seeds for what would eventually be The Last of Us, because from their conception, even with Crash Bandicoot, their idea was to focus on storytelling, telling stories through a gameplay experience. And despite the fact that Crash has like a silly cartoony story with silly cartoony characters, that's what was like that's what they were able to deliver at that point with the technology of the PS1 that later evolved into what they were able to do with Jack and Daxter on the PS2, that later evolved into what they were able to do with the Uncharted series on PS3. Um, so I think Crash as a character and as a franchise deserves the respect for being number one, the major PlayStation mascot on the PS1, that Sony basically just abandoned after the PS1, that is not even owned by Sony. It's owned by Activision at this point, but I'm pretty sure at that point could have been owned by Sony. Like, Crash could have been Sony's Mario if only they cared enough about it, right?
And for a while there were more kids that knew who Crash was than Mario for a while, for like one of those like index surveys or whatever that they did in the 90s.
Yeah, I believe that. Like, my generation, I know I'm younger than you, Louis, like my generation was all about Crash. Like, Crash was cool. Like, Crash was cool in the way that people sometimes say, Sonic was cool.
Yeah.
Back in the Sega Genesis days. It's like Mario was lame, Crash is cool.
Yeah.
And then, when Crash was gone, then some of us gravitated back to Mario and some of our other favorite mascot characters. So I really think Crash represents this weird, like, lost opportunity for Sony in a lot of ways. But on another hand, it is also the beginning of Naughty Dog, which goes on to become the major, Sony first party later on. So
I'm just genuinely surprised that like Naughty Dog didn't own the rights to Crash. Whenever they bought the studio, I would have hoped that they would have gotten Crash in the.
I don't know what the story is there. Like, I have no idea how the rights to Crash somehow ended up with Activision, considering that the game was published by Sony at that point. I'm pretty sure like Naughty Dog was a studio that later became a Sony-owned studio. Like,
well, it says it was published by Universal of all things.
Oh, okay. So maybe I messed that up. Interesting. All right.
Yeah, but it was exclusive to the PlayStation 1. I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, no, I think that you're right. I think one of the things I will say you might be right about the third one being the best one is because the third one had like the little animal riding ones where you're like going into like into the game, like the camera is behind you, instead of like, all the stuff is behind you, like going into coming towards you. Like, I think they fixed that by making you run the other way. And then also the second thing was, it had those, the motorbike riding sections that would become Crash Team Racing, if I'm not mistaken. So there's like levels and stuff where you're in the motorcycle or whatever, which is in the cover art of all things, just to back up my point. But yeah, you're right. I do remember that, and about like the relevancy, the cultural relevancy that that Crash had for a hot minute. It just sucks that his 15 minutes of fame ended versus.
And Mario. The other thing too is like for the longest time for like PlayStation conferences and stuff like that, there would often be like literally in the audience somebody yelling like, please bring Crash back and stuff like that. Like, that was a desire within like the audience, like not necessarily like the older like gaming critics and stuff that maybe did not really catch that generation as much, like that era. But for the people our age, I always saw in forums and Twitter stuff and whatnot, like there was a desire to see Crash back, and we finally have Crash back.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, so now we're going into the top three. My number 3 is going to be... okay. All right, I'm sort of regretting my own pick here, but okay. I mean, it is what it is. There's got to be a Pokemon game in this list here.
Yes.
So obviously, there is something to say about the cultural relevancy that the first game in the series has, even to this day. Pokemon Red and Blue, and even like I'll even extend the courtesy to Yellow. Um, these games are one of those like childhood defining games where everyone on the playground was playing was bringing their Game Boy to school and trading Pokemon together. And like I remember playing this game in elementary school. I remember like they watching the anime and collecting the trading cards, even though I don't know how to play the trading card game. Those like it was like a marketing blitz that just sort of like is like a way of selling cocaine and crack to kids. So
Yeah.
Nintendo and the Pokemon Company, they basically like leveraged like that OCD that got to catch them all, and telling making sure that these sales numbers gets pumped up, because you have to either A, buy 2 copies of the game and 2 Game Boys, or B, know somebody with the other version of the game, so that way you can trade and link up with each other and help each other out, tit for tat and all that stuff. So I think it's very like just genius, like just like galaxy brain like genius with what they did and the kind of ambition that they pulled off. And there is something to be said about how people are like constantly being referred to as Gen 1ers. And there's something to be said about how like these games get like their virtual console re-release on the 3DS, and then on the Switch you get Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, which are basically Gen 1 remakes and stuff like that. The Game Boy Advance had like Fire Red and Leaf Green, and like those basically just Gen 1 is where it's at. People just constantly are giving the nod to Gen 1, and I don't think there's ever going to be a time where Gen 1ers are not going to be appeased. You know what I mean? So that's what I think, and I really do appreciate that there were so many exploits and glitches in this game, like the infinite rare candy glitch and stuff like that, where you just sort of make missing no spawns and it multiplies your items in your item box. Like those little exploits are really cool, and I hated that they patched it out in Pokemon Yellow. I really do. That's one thing I don't like about Pokemon Yellow. Uh, is that, but just in general, like the people reverse engineered someone in like the 2000s and 10s, I think, or like early 2010, like somebody reversed engineered the Mew glitch. Somebody like looked at the coding in the program and found an exploit and worked backwards, which is insane. And that's how I got a Mew. Even on the 3DS Virtual Console, I was able to pull it off. So it's so awesome. It's so amazing. And shout out to the soundtrack. And shout out to how creepy the game is on Lavender Town with that scary music and stuff like that. So yeah, I love this game.
I am so shocked to realize that I completely forgot about Pokemon. um, because it would have been on my list somewhere as well. I have this very faint memory of having an OG Game Boy with Pokemon on and going to like preschool or whatever, and then sitting on a corner and just playing Pokemon on my Game Boy and having a bunch of other kids just start gathering around me wanting to see what it is and wanting to check it out and stuff like that. So yeah, it is a game that defined a generation that is so much more than just a game. It is a cultural phenomenon, right? It's the show, it's the toys, it's the plushies, it's everything. I had this Pikachu plushie that I could press on and it would say Pikachu like that. I've had for such a long time. Like I don't have it anymore, but I literally got it when I was like 5, and I had it up until I was like 20 or something. Um, and I have this memory as well of going into the store, and it was just a general like toy store or stuffed animal store or something. And this adult who worked at the store came to me and he was like, "Oh, what are you looking for, little boy?" And I was like, "Oh, I want a Pokemon." And then he said, "Oh yeah, which one? Let me know which one you'd like." And then I said something like Charmander. And then it's like, "Oh, we don't got that one. What's your second best option?" And then I said Bulbasaur, and then he said, "Oh well, we don't got that one either." And then I said, "I know this sounds like the first episode of the show, but I mean it. This is legit." And then I said like Squirtle or something, and it's like, we got Pikachu." And then he brought me Pikachu, and then my mom bought it, and that was literally the only one they had. And I think about that story a lot because I go to stores now and here in LA, at least, there's a lot of these like nerd and specifically like Japanese stores that have a lot of like they'll have like Pokemon stuff and anime stuff and like Gundams and all sorts of shit. And they have so many like you go in and you can find plushies for like 100 different Pokemon in the store from like all the different generations. And it's funny to think like I wish I had that in my days as a kid, because when I was a kid, like all you could find was Pikachu, pretty much. Like,
you gotta get stuck with a Pikachu plushie, and you wanted a Charmander.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I'm surprised you went with Bulbasaur as your second choice in the story. You should have went with Squirtle, but okay, whatever.
I like Bulbasaur. I think Bulbasaur is underrated.
But yeah, no, I just yeah, it's definitely a situation where it's like I'm not entirely sure like if Nintendo knew what they were doing. Like, I mean, I think they might have known, but like just the sheer like I don't know. It's almost like it's like brilliant, but also evil. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the idea, it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna sell you a game, but it's incomplete. You know what I mean? Like, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think that that's just like one of those situations where it's like, it definitely like, you know, scratches something at something in your psyche. And I just wanted to say, like, I really do like the you know, Pikachu, you know, the Pokemon Yellow, because it was Game Boy Color compatible and it was, you know, colored and stuff like that. And as far as like, you know, Pikachu walks around behind you and he emotes when you talk to him. I think that those are all cool. And also you can get all 3 starters in the game with, you know, legitimately without having to trade for it. But I can't get over the fact that you can't do the rare candy glitch. It's one of the things that like it just irks me. And also just like the there wasn't going to be a version of where they were able to like make it work with what Pokemon are not in the game. So I just kind of felt like they were random at times, because one of the things that with Red and Blue is they were released together simultaneously and they completed each other. Whatever was in Red was not in Blue, and whatever was in Blue was not in Red. And yeah, Pokemon Yellow just didn't really fit as far as like, you know, what can I do to help? You know, you really can't help Red because you can't help Red complete the decks, and you can't help Blue complete the decks either. You just kind of suck. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things that I just kind of didn't like about that third version. So yeah, I know it's in the weeds, but yeah. So still though, the point stands. Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, number 3.
Fair enough. Lewis, you got 2 games to go, and I know what they are. Because I got 3 games to go, and the 3 games I have left are the 2 games you got, and 1 weird Dan choice. Just letting you know.
Okay, I think you have me figured out. Okay.
Yeah, I have it figured out.
Okay.
You know, I've known you long enough. I know where this is going. I know the games that haven't showed up yet that should have.
And you just don't know the order. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
So we're about to find out. My number 3. I'm just gonna say it. My number 3 is possibly one of the best games, like possibly one of the 2 best games of all time. But the only reason why I put it at number 3 is because I didn't play it until much later. So I am giving the edge to games I love that I played then. My number 3 is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Yep. You played it for the first time on the 3DS, I remember.
Yes. Which I played for the first time on the 3DS in 2011, which is when it came out. But that game is so good that I played it in 2011, and I still loved it. And it still became one of my favorite games of all time. And I say this because a lot of times these games get remasters and remakes, and people will go and replay them on the remaster and be like, oh, this is great, it stood up to the test of time, but they are not necessarily as beloved by somebody who's playing them for the first time, because there's some level of nostalgia there that kind of helps carry the game. I had no existing nostalgia for Ocarina of Time when I played it in 2011, and I very much loved it. I had limited Zelda experience at the time. I had played Twilight Princess. I had played maybe a little bit of some of the other ones, like maybe a little bit of Link to the Past and stuff. But that was my first time that I was really digging into, one of the best Zelda games. And I like I had a few things spoiled to me that I wish I had not. Smash Brothers spoiled what like a certain reveal to me because if you think about it, you probably know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because that character, like, it's supposed to be a reveal in Ocarina of Time, but because you can swap between the characters in Smash Brothers, it kind
I
of
think
gives
we
it
could
away,
say it.
right?
I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's a 1996 game. Come on.
Yeah,
Uh,
like Zelda and Sheik like being the same person. That is supposed to be like a big reveal in the game, and that had been given away already. Although, like, the way that it was presented was still kind of like interesting. But I actually I didn't that aside, like, I didn't know much about the game when I played it, and I very much enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the characters. As simple as most of it is, just the different dungeons are so cool. Like the different items that you find in the dungeons. The moment, like the moment after you've gone through the first three, like, almost like tutorial temples in the beginning, right? And then you pull the sword out of the stone and you travel in time for the first time. Like, that was such a impactful moment, even though I experienced it that late. I had never really seen it before. I might have seen it, but like I didn't see it in a way that I understood it. I had never like gone through it. And then you like walk outside like the Temple of Time, and the town is completely like trashed, and there are these zombie looking things going around, and you're like, what the fuck happened? Like that feeling, like it was, I don't know, like that game just evoked so much out of me, even though I was playing it basically as an adult and so long after the fact. Like, it still managed to evoke those responses out of me, like those surprises, those feelings. um and there's just so much to do in the game too. Like the major quest that you go on is just like a part of what you can do in that game. There's so many side quests, there's so many extra things that you can go and pursue, and those are fun as well. So I don't know, I think it's a very solid game. I'm giving it my number three, but in a different day of the week, I could have given it number one. I could have given it number two. It's definitely up there.
yeah, yeah. I'll go ahead and just reveal that this is my number two. I think
Mm-hmm.
you already figured out what my top two are.
Yep.
So you already know. But yeah, this is my number two. Definitely, it's basically like a two-way tie for my number one and number two.
Mm-hmm.
They could have easily swapped places, but it's definitely one of the greatest games of all time, and it still stands the test of time. And it's still, I would even dare say that even the N64 version of this game is actually got its, one particular advantage over the 3DS version. The 3DS is more polished and graphically like more like attuned to what we would think. Like I have a screenshot here. You can't see it, Dan, but I have a screenshot pulled up where it's like, here's the graphics of the N64 and here's how it looks like on the 3DS, and it's like the way the the 3DS version of the game looks like the way my memory remembers the
Mm-hmm.
N64 looking like. The one thing I don't like about the 3DS version is that the ocarina, like the way you play the songs, is a little like with the button mapping. It's like since I came from the N64 and I like the yellow, the left, right, up, down, like the yellow C buttons. Like I think I like that. I like playing the ocarina with that button layout.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much easier to learn the songs that way, in my opinion. I even have a T-shirt where like it's got like the notes of like the Song of Storms. I'm even learning how to play the Song of Storms on the piano. Like I learned how to play a bunch of like these little jingles from the soundtrack on the piano as well. So it's so awesome, so memorable, such a beautiful soundtrack. You didn't even give a shout out to the soundtrack, so no, that's shame on you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But also a shout out to like the colorful cast of characters, like the Goron village and like the big
Mm-hmm.
Goron guy, and then like the princess from the water temple. Whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember her names. Such a good. But anyways, I just remember
Isn't
like
it Zuto?
yeah,
Ruto?
yeah. I think it's
Yeah.
Rudo. I think I want to say. But yeah, also just shout out to like Epona and just being able to ride on that big open plane and stuff like that. There's just so much that was so good about this game that just sort of give you that spirit of adventure, especially at the beginning part of the game. You know, you're playing as a child. There's like that childlike wonder and stuff. And when you do the first three dungeons and stuff like that, it almost kind of feels like a game in and of itself. Like you don't if you didn't know what the game length is like, you would almost think that it's almost fulfilling. It's like, okay, you finished the game, you're about to roll credits.
Yeah.
But then they sort of like pull the rug underneath you, and you're like, no, it's actually gotten worse. You got 5 more dungeons to go, and now shit's real.
Yeah.
You're an adult. You're gonna have more powerful weapons, more powerful enemies, and I'm like, holy shit, it's so dark and so good. And I like I like the conventions that I like what they established as far as like I think Nintendo sort of like they are so successful, but they were also victims of their own success because now that they established formulas and stuff like that, they couldn't. It was so hard for them to deviate, and it wasn't until Breath of the Wild that they finally broke free and started rethinking conventions. But the conventions were written. The playbook was written because of this game, and in a certain way, in a certain sense, I've even saw a YouTube video where it was sort of saying that this is basically a glorified remake of the Super Nintendo A Link to the Past. Like there's so many tropes that this did that Link to the Past already did before it. And if you think about the whole 3 dungeons and then the world changes, that was done in A Link to the Past where you did 3 dungeons and then you get the Dark World. That kind of stuff. So there's just so many things that basically you were just sort of like say like, oh yeah, if you just take the Super Nintendo game and just 3Dify it, and then that's Ocarina of Time, and more power to it. I love the game. I think that the game is just this franchise is just so beloved, and anyone who's a Zelda fan was probably 100% has played this game.
Yeah. So, or if not, should.
Yeah, that's true.
Because there are, we forget that sometimes, but there are fans can join a franchise at any point. There's probably plenty of people out there whose first Zelda game was Breath of the Wild, and they love it, and they're very excited for Zelda 2. And I think they can say they're a Zelda fan, that's fine. But then they should go and play Ocarina of Time, despite the fact that I think is the only way you can really play it now, like on the 3DS, or at least that version of the game.
I mean, if you have a Wii U, the Wii U eShop, It's not been ported to the Switch, but it was on the Virtual Console for the Wii and the Wii U.
Yeah. But I feel like the true, because they did such a good job with that 3DS version, which, by the way, that was like a time frame where I feel like Nintendo really put in the effort in the remasters. I wish we saw that level of love that was put in Ocarina of Time 3D be put into other games that they're bringing to the Switch right now. But that's a conversation for another time. But yeah, if you have a 3DS laying around, go and play that game. It's great.
As much as I hated the fact that putting in Ocarina of Time and stuff, I mean I chose it, but I did have some second thoughts about considering about Link's Awakening. But I did a whole sharing the love about that. Yeah, but it's not. There's no Link's Awakening is completely leagues below Ocarina of Time. But damn, I love Link's Awakening.
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame that with our sort of unofficial, sort of official rule, that we couldn't have both here. Right.
All right. Yeah.
All right. But a game that we can have here is my number 2, which is not in your list, because it's a very just Dan game.
Okay.
Which my number 2 is the game that introduced me to tactical / strategy games. I like those types of games. I talked about SimCity before. This is another game in the same vein. It is a game that introduced me to this franchise. It is the game that I probably played the most hours off in my childhood years out of all these 90s games. It is Civilization 2.
Okay.
I was obsessed with it. I played the hell out of it. There was just so many different things you could do about that game. The general idea behind that series is you pick a civilization, maybe you pick the American civilization, or the Mongolia, or India or something like that. I don't know why I was literally blanking on country names in my head. And then you lead that civilization from the beginning of time all the way to current times, one turn at a time. There's something that people make fun of with that game, which is the whole like one more turn. Like I'm gonna play it for one more turn, and before you notice it, you've been playing it for 4 hours. Because it is really addicting that way. It is all about like building all your different cities. If Sim City is about building a city, Civilization is about building
A
an
world.
array of cities and an army and a world, and you find like these like other civilization around the world, and then you can interact with them and trade with them, or you can declare war, or maybe they'll declare war at you. Maybe you got to form an alliance with another civilization to fight like this one or whatever. There are multiple ways to win in the game, and there is so much complexity in this game. Even in Civilization 2 at this point in the 90s, there were actually parts of the game then that got removed later on that I wish were still around. They had a whole system, which I think I've mentioned this in the regular podcast and Sharing the Love or something before. Uh, but they have this advisor system in the game, where you are the king, right, of this civilization. But you got like these NPCs that will work as your advisors. Like you got like your Secretary of State and your Secretary of Finance and all these other things. And for this game, they straight up had actors, like live action actors, record like 100 different like things that the advisors could say. And you would have like, for any situation that you could run into the game, you could consult with your advisors, and you would watch videos of like these legit like people dressed according to the time that you're in the game. Like, be like, oh, Mr. Leader, like my dear Supreme Lord, like I would advise that you do this and that. And they just had those people record all these different scenarios in all of the different outfits that they could be in. um oh, interesting. I just got a notification here, Zencaster. I hope nothing went
You're good.
wrong.
You're good. You're good.
Okay. Anyway, the game is just phenomenal. There's like so much to it. The AI like had so much depth to it for a game at that time frame. And I just feel like, number one, it had to be on my list, and once I started ranking things, I knew that it had to be up top, because I just very much love this game. I knew it was not going to be in your list, so I also wanted to give it the most points I could to bring it all the way up close.
I hate you.
This is a very beloved game amongst PC nerds, and I was one at this time, and I'm all about it. So I wanted to make sure I got represented here.
So just to ask you, I guess since I don't have any input, by the way,
Yeah.
but just to ask you is which civilization is the best civilization to ever civilization?
It's hard to tell. It's kind of like asking like what Smash Brothers is the best, like, because you can probably point out and say, Ultimate has the most content, it has the best graphics, it's the most up to date. It is probably like, I say as a layman, but it is probably the best game on paper. But the community loves Melee because of its competitiveness and everything, and then maybe Smash 64 was your first one, and then maybe you'll love that one the most or whatever. So I feel like my favorite is Civilization 2, but but all the other ones like have their values as well. This was just this, because it is like the first one I played. I have a really hard time like getting past the impact of like the first. You know what I mean? Like I know a lot of people are like, they can go like, oh yeah, like third. Like I played all of them, like third was the best or whatever. Like I have a hard time with that, because the game that impacts the most is usually the first one I play in the franchise.
So I for the audio listeners, I actually, before he revealed, I actually said 6 on my. I put up 6 fingers up, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, he didn't go with 6. But I wanted to say that from like my outside looking in, like just because like I don't know anything about Civ, the only ones I don't hear people, when I do hear anything about Civ, like it feels like the people that don't shut the fuck up about Civ, it's all about 4 and 6. So
Yeah, 4 is really good. I have not played 6 yet, actually.
oh
So, which I know is like a sin for somebody
yeah.
like me. But I love 4. I really like 4. I think I like 4 more than 5. So it's like, it for me, it's in between 4 and 2. And you won't hear people that don't shut up about Civ 2 like me. because most of the people that that you meet nowadays that are really into Civ, they got into it later.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like finding somebody that didn't shut up about Fallout 2. Like you are not gonna find that because the people that got into Fallout, the majority of them got into it like Fallout 3 or 4. Or,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
3 actually. Yeah, you're right. 3. You're
Yeah.
right. You're right. That's
Um.
actually a fair point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like how
But
I won't shut the fuck up about Link's Awakening,
yeah, like I'm one of the OGs with that franchise. But anyway, Lewis, it's time for number one or mutual number one. So I'll let you do the honors
All
since I was
right.
just talking a lot.
We always end the podcast with the sound effect.
That
So
is true.
it should be no surprise that Super Mario World is gonna be our number one. And here's why. We even talked about it on like the last, or I guess 2 weeks ago for you guys, or when this is debuting, whenever we did the Temple of Time, and we talked about the launch of the Super Nintendo 30 years ago. Was it 30 years ago? 35? I don't know. 91? Yeah, that's been 30 years. Okay. We talked about, Super Mario World, Yoshi. The world we were introduced to Yoshi for the first time. It's definitely one of these games that is very much evergreen. Like, the reason why I sort of bumped this over Ocarina of Time is the it's definitely the closest thing that I will possibly say is gaming perfection, in my opinion. It's like one of these kind of. It's like it's got a beautiful sprawling overworld map. It's got secrets. It's got secret exits and like different paths, and it's got it's got a lot going as far as charm and good level design and very fun. It's got the perfect difficulty scaling. It's also good for like to make kids feel accomplished when you beat the game. But you can also find like a secret star world and have like really hard levels that are just like fun for like the real pro players, the real hardcore. So I think there's just like the formula and everything was just on point as far as like all engines are on fire and sort of soundtrack, graphics, gameplay, you name it, it's all there. Like, and I think that even people by like today's standards would play this game and love the game and like basically it's basically like the OG new Super Mario Brothers is how I would explain it. So I think that this game is just it's just beautiful. It's like you don't need a crazy like sprawling story like Metal Gear Solid or Ocarina of Time. You just need fun. That's all you need. And I think that this game has that down perfect. And I think there's a reason why this game will never get old, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what I got to say.
This game has so many secrets too. I've gone back and like Super Mario World is the true 2D Mario game that I grew up with. And the one that I loved and played so much of as a kid. And I had it's one of those games that can be enjoyed by anybody. I remember being very little when I was playing it, but I had an uncle who was 5 years older than me, and I had an aunt that was about I think she's about 15 years older than me, and we would all play it together, like the three of us. And we all enjoyed it. And like I would do some stuff, then I'd get stuck, and then they would take the controller from my hands and do some more stuff. There was so much to find, and people talk a lot about Super Mario Brothers. 1, 3. Some people like 2. Uh, and those are all great, and those I mostly played either as part of All Stars on the Super Nintendo, but more so like the originals I went back to later on. And don't get me wrong, these are all like probably tens as well, just like Super Mario World is. But um, I think that Super Mario World is probably the best one, the best 2D Mario game in my opinion, because I feel like it perfected everything that the other games were doing. And it just had more. And I know like more is not always like best, but I feel like it had more with more quality too, like it felt like it had more variety to its levels. It had more like surprises. It had more exploration within the level. um like Super Mario, ever since like the first Super Mario Brothers, you had situations where you could go off the beaten path a little bit and find hidden blocks and other stuff. But I felt like Super Mario World went all out with that. And the flying mechanic in Super Mario World to me is the best flying mechanic in all the Super Mario games too. Like the feather that you get. I know people are big fans of the Tanuki Mario, and Tanuki Mario is great, but Raccoon Mario, um but I feel like the feather in Super Mario World is up there as one of the best items in any Mario game.
Yeah, that's
And the
mentioned. You get to
ghost,
like fly infinitely by sort of catching a wave.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the ghost houses are also really good and fun in that game. I don't know. It's just all around a damn near perfect game, and I think no other game, other than maybe Ocarina of Time, would have deserved being in the top spot of our list.
Yeah, it's definitely a pinnacle in gaming. Gaming, I would say. But yeah, I'm very happy with the list actually overall. Like, I think we just got to compile it. But before we round out the score and everything like that, I wanted to go over honorable mentions here. As a matter of fact, we each get to bring in our number 11 spots into the bottom of the list, because of the we each there were two ties. There was Mortal Kombat and Ocarina of Time. There was three. Who was the third one?
Super Mario World.
Oh shit! That means we have to debate who gets the second. Who gets
So I
number
have a
12.
suggestion. So I have a suggestion that I think there's a game that we can both agree should have been on this list that didn't make it on this list.
Okay.
And I think that game is Super Metroid.
I played it.
So I think that
I played it.
but
Yeah.
but give me your honorable mentions.
Okay, well, Super Metroid is actually one of my honorable mentions, and like, here's the thing, like, I don't know if I would have put it in my top 10. I think it might have been in my top 20. Uh, as far as like, I don't know, like the game, I played the game as an adult. Like, I played the game like for the first time in like 2015, 2016. So
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to like give it a base judgment. Like, I played the game and I thought it was fun. I think it was fine as far as like, secrets and, scanning and exploring and, world map and all that stuff. I think that it was definitely a good like groundwork for Metroidvanias, but I've played better Metroidvanias since then. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
Ori,
right.
To name a few. So it's really hard for me to give it like a fair judgment, but I know it is. I know like that and also Symphony of the Night were both in the 90s, and they were
Yeah.
both like they are literally like the two halves of that title, Metroidvania. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you could just as easily say Symphony of the Night for instead of Super Metroid. If anything, I thought Symphony of the Night outdid it, didn't it, or no? Outdoes Metroid.
That's arguable, I would say. I'm more of a Metroid person. Let me tell you my honorable mentions. So my honorable mentions were Super Metroid, Roller Coaster Tycoon, uh,
Come on, man.
Age
Okay.
of Empires 1 and 2, Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey, Yoshi's Island, Mega Man X,
That was one of mine.
Spyro the Dragon, Crash Team Racing, and Dino Crisis.
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and give you my honorable mentions. Marvel vs. Capcom, as well as Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. I couldn't decide between the two. They're both basically the same game, but with different rosters. There's GoldenEye 007. I almost didn't want to put it on the list because it doesn't stand the test of time. It's so archaic with its controls. But it's so defining because it was one of the first console first-person shooters other than Doom. But as far as like, what we think of. I also put in Tekken 3, Star Fox 64, Resident Evil, Super Mario 64, Super Mario Party, Killer Instinct Gold, Earthbound, Twisted Metal, Time Crisis, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy 6, or Final Fantasy 3 for the Super Nintendo as we think about it in America, Mega Man X, and The Lion King.
I'm going to put Super Metroid on the list, and I give you the other two.
Okay. All right. Okay. You know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in Marvel vs. Capcom because it's definitely like one of those like defining, crossover fighting Marvel characters, Street Fighter characters, and stuff like that. It's definitely one of those games that I really like because here's the thing: I played in the '90s. I played more Marvel superheroes versus Street Fighter, and I played it on the PlayStation One. But the reason why I'm going to give the edge to Marvel versus Capcom is because it's a better roster. Number one, it's more all around, and number two, I played it on the Dreamcast, and the Dreamcast was like a special version that you couldn't get in the arcade, you couldn't get in the PlayStation One version. Is the fact that the Dreamcast has four ports, and so when you tag out, you can tag out with the partner. You can play like Tekken Tag essentially, where it's like, all right, it's your turn in tag, and like it was one of those frustrating things. Was like where I'm like I'm carrying the team, and it sucks when my partner isn't as good as me. But it's kind of like one of those fun things about it. So I'm just gonna give the edge to Marvel versus Capcom simply because of the Dreamcast version. But that's just one of those kind of like fun moments and stuff that I think of. And then I'm going to go ahead and give it to The Lion King simply because since Aladdin is on the list, The Lion King should also make the list. It's, again, I did a sharing the love on. I think I'm pretty sure I did a sharing the love on the game where it's like one of those games where like I just played the shit out of it. I still play it from time to time. I can like sort of play that game sort of blindfolded and essentially, but not really. But you get the drift. I know the secrets. I know how to just play the game like without dying and stuff. And no cheats necessary. There are cheats, but I don't need them. Because I'm just that good. And I really love The Lion King, the movie, and I love The Lion King, the game. Like, it's like a match made in heaven. It's like just perfection where it's like, where like for me, it's like whenever the movie tie-in license game doesn't suck, it's like awesome. So, yeah.
Cool. Louis, I actually have our compiled list.
Oh, snap.
If you noticed, I kept like, I grabbed a notebook before we started this, and I kept like making notes as we were doing it. And like,
see, I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I was ready to compile. By the way, I had it ready to go.
So you were being very efficient, and I somehow got ahead of you a little bit. Because okay. I didn't expect that you would be doing that. So,
but you know what? Let me ask you this: did you compile it yourself and like give the edge yourself, or did you?
Here's what I did, and I think you're gonna be happy with this.
Okay.
Given the circumstances in which you are the elderly amongst us,
thanks.
And you have played a lot more games than I did,
and I played a lot of your list, by the way. So
yeah, I therefore basically gave you the edge on any ties.
Okay. All right, so hit us up with the compile.
And with that, this is what we end up with. Oh, with one exception, which is with the additions at the end. I put Super Metroid above your two choices because you got to pick two and I didn't.
Okay, so that's fair. I'll allow it.
All right. So number 20, The Lion King.
Okay.
Number 19, Marvel vs. Capcom. Number 18, Super Metroid. Number 17, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Number 16, Secret of Mana. Number 15, SimCity 2000. Number 14, Disney's Aladdin. Number 13, Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Number 12, The House of the Dead 2. Number 11, Mario Kart 64. On to the top 10. Number 10, Smash 64. Number 9, Mortal Kombat 3. Number 8, Donkey Kong Country 2. Number 7, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Number 6, Crash Bandicoot Warped. Did I say? Yeah. Okay. Now on to the top 5. Number 5, Metal Gear Solid. Number 4, Pokemon Red and Blue. Number 3, Civilization 2. Number 2, Ocarina of Time. And number 1, Super Mario World.
Wow. Okay, like this list almost feels a little like schizophrenic at times.
That's a good way. That's an interesting way to describe it.
Like Civ 2 at number 3, like holy shit.
It's the Ready Press. It can't like I never want to do a list here, Louis, and end up with a generic like this is the same as the IGN list or the same as the GameSpot list or whatever. Like, I like that we have our weird side to it. I will say this. There's about 15 games in this list that are what you would expect in any other list, and then we got our like 5-ish like weird picks that mostly come from me because I don't like being basic.
Where I was, yeah.
um but I don't mind the list. I think it's funny, actually. I think it's funny that, and this is something that we are both to blame. It's funny to see a list like this and see Super Metroid under so many of these other games. but when i but when I say we're both to blame, is that I am to blame for putting some of these games here, but you are also to blame for not putting Super Metroid on your list to begin with.
I played it as an adult, and also like I have yet to play Symphony of the Night, by the way.
Yeah,
But
me
one thing
too.
I do know about Symphony of the Night, and this might be a spoiler, but like there's a part where like the game world turns upside down, and you're playing the game while like walking on the ceiling and stuff. And I think that it was one of those interesting like little game designs that's like whoa, like just mind blowing how the game works both upside down and right side up, and then also that's the reason why I would think that you would sort of give Symphony of the Night over Super Metroid because hardware limitations, Super Nintendo, and then you got a PlayStation One, you got cool like sprite animations and like this. You're playing as Alucard, who's fast as fuck and can dash and stuff. So
Fair enough. But I just couldn't give Castlevania Symphony of the Night the edge because I didn't really play it. You didn't really play it. But we both played Super Metroid. I never beat it, but I played it enough to know, like, yeah, that was a pretty cool game, and
yeah,
that was kind of like almost like a free like everybody loves this game and we liked it, so like maybe we should give it a.
It's kind of funny, and I guess, and I don't know if you know this, but I'll go ahead and admit it here. I played Super Metroid as part of a spoiler cast. Like there was Kind of Funny was doing a Kind of Funny book club, and I was able to be a part of it. And so I played the game, and I actually beat the game minutes before going live on the Kind of Funny book club. And I was one of the few people in the book club that actually beat the game and rolled credits. So yeah. So yeah, just Kind of Funny. It's just really an interesting thing. And like I don't begrudge the game or say anything bad. I don't really have anything bad to say about the game, to tell you the truth. But I also don't think it's like a game that I resonated with as far as enough to warrant me putting it in my top 10. You know what I mean?
Did you need a guide
to
play it?
I think I played like half the game without a guide and the other half with the guide.
Because I think the only reason why I didn't beat that game is because at some point I started getting stuck pretty often. And like getting stuck, not the typical like, oh, you get stuck, you get frustrated for a little bit, try for 10 minutes, pick the game back up later, and it's like, oh, okay, figured it out, like, which is normal. It was more like, I really don't know what to do. And I think that's ultimately what led me to like putting it down. But I should probably go back to it and actually finish it sometime. Use
Interesting.
a guide to finish it.
Now that I think about it, like, there's one thing that I will say that I don't like about the game is that I played it on the Wii U. And I say that like not because it's saying it's bad. It's like, the virtual console sucks or anything like that. But I played the game in like, there's this thing where like if you play an old game on like a modern console, there isn't quite the same response time that you would get when you play it on a CRT TV. So that's why Melee players, they play on CRTs, they don't play on flat screens, because when you plug in those old composites into like a modern monitor, you ended up getting some lag, some delay with converting a analog picture to digital. And one of the things that I did notice when I was playing it on the Wii U is that there's a section in the game where you need to wall jump your way up to the top, and because it's so frame perfect that I was noticing that the delay on the Wii U, playing it on my TV, that I couldn't wall jump. And I had to like learn how to like time it so I wall jump before I'm supposed to, or
Right.
So yeah, that's one thing that annoyed me. But that's not the game's fault. It's more like modern emulation's fault. But yeah,
fair enough.
And that was a completely different side tangent. But anyways, yeah, I think we should end it. It's we're just over 2 hours, and it's perfect timing. I had fun making this list. I had fun talking about this list. This is like really good. I'm surprised it took us this long to do this list, by the way, or to do the DLC because it's been on our to-do list for a really long time.
You know, it's funny that like I could have pushed for it before, but I intentionally did not because I kept telling myself like I got to play more games before we can do the other lists. Because like, dude, when we get to the 80s, that like I will suffer on that one because I've played, I've played maybe 20 different games from the 80s for like 10 minutes each. To be fair, that's also a time frame where you can beat most of those games in like 20 minutes, but I'm sure I'll pull something out of my ass.
I'm pretty sure I can pull it off. There were a lot of games that I saw that I was like, oh, okay, this can be it.
Yeah.
There was even one game that was like in 1990. I was like, oh, I can just go back with the number before it, and then that's one of my, Also, let me just ask you before we sign off here, what are your thoughts on Super Mario Brothers 3 as being an 80s eligible list? It came out in 1990 in the U.S., but it came out in 88. It came out in 88 in the Famicom in Japan.
We can consider the original release. Yeah.
Okay.
Because Mario Brothers 3 has got to be there. Like, it's honestly, it's either that or Mario Brothers 1.
Yeah.
Which is like it's an argument of like the better game versus the most influential game.
Yeah.
Which is I don't know.
Yeah, Mario 3 is a better game. Like it's definitely set the stage for Mario World. But I think comparing Mario 3 to Mario World is like it's super hard because you got better hardware with the Super Nintendo. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So, yeah. But yeah, well, that's definitely. I'm glad we have that rule. I'm glad it's in contention. Hell, with how little games that we may have played in the 80s, maybe both. There's room for both on the list.
Yeah, because like what was the 80? It was like the NES, right?
Yeah.
So
you got Metroid,
like
you got Zelda,
Metroid, the first Zelda, the first.
You got Castlevania, Mega Man's.
I don't really like the NES games as much. I think the Legend of Zelda, like the first one, I think it's obtuse and like so like difficult to play by today's standards. Like, I don't know. Like, I love the Super Nintendo era of gaming. I think those games stood the test of time. But with the NES, like, I don't know. I kind of feel like those games are more like they're kind of the equivalent of the PS1 to me. Where like those games just don't stand the test of time as well.
There's Mike Tyson's Punch Out. There's TMNT, the arcade game. There's like there's stuff there. I like the NES plenty. But yeah, we'll go ahead.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. We'll go ahead and sign off for now, though. I'm not even gonna play the sound effects. Screw it. It is time to end the show. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Ready Press Play. Remember, you can reach the podcast by Twitter or TikTok at Ready Press Play. And I'm on Twitter at Chakalaka88 and Dan.
And Dan Lima.
So don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and tell your friends about the show and all that good stuff. See you next time.
See ya.